Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Inside Movies Galore. I'm David Streggy, and here I have another review for you of an experimental film that several years ago, when I first started um, putting money into helping films out, I came across a campaign for an experimental film that has to do with Dante's Inferno. And with the along with funding the project, I got a bonus film that was a previous film from the director, and the director goes by the name Dustin Rosmark, and he's from the Midwest. And this first film was filmed in 2014, and it was basically a journey as a photographer, as he filmed images starting in the Midwest, going on a plane flight to Paris, France, and going to Portugal, um, uh, over bits of Italy, Rome, Budapest, along the Danube, um, uh, ending up in Edinburgh, Glasgow, um, bits of Toulouse or Toulouse, um, uh, and different cities throughout. And it ended up becoming a journey of, the different people and the different cultures and the philosophies that he grew up with, and learning that he was not alone in his journey, trying to figure out why he came on this journey to begin with, and whether he was actually accomplishing what he set out to do, which I think was to because he didn't know whether he was going to live or die the next day. He thought that this would be, adventurous. It would be something that he would, that he wanted to do before there would come a day where he couldn't. And there were some cities that would make him very depressed because of the fact that commercialism and tourism had taken over some of the cities. But like when he was in Rome, he was because much of the imagery was set with a narrative of his writing, and I love his diction for this narrative. So each city, as it was filmed, he told a little bit of a story while he was there. Like he was visiting with a friend, and evidently she was pregnant, and she would talk to him about her life and her loves, her pities, her woes, and then she would take him to a marketplace that had dead fish. In Rome, he mentioned that he was not a Christian, but yet seeing a speech put out by the Pope, and you could see how happy these people were. Kind of made him feel like uplifting. There were some cities that made him feel like he just get out of there. Maybe because of the way that the things are or whatnot. He ultimately ended up on the way to Istanbul. He ended up traveling with a man who openly said that he was carrying crack and weed over the border to Istanbul, and he just because the having to think about how if he had journeyed with him any longer, he would have ended up in a prison somewhere. He had to part ways, and things of this nature. But also pondering, Um, even though he's journeying to these places um, outside of, you know, where he's from, um, he's still an outsider, and there's always a place that everyone can find that they can call home. And I thought that this was an interesting perspective, at least of his thoughts and his thought patterns. Here's the second. Um, uh, you could have originally gotten a copy of the film with with a cool cover or whatnot, kind of similar to the one on Inferno, which I'll show in the next review. But I thought that this was entertaining. I mean, he started out in Paris. We saw a bit of, you know, the Eiffel Tower. We saw a little bit of the Louvre, which I remember seeing in the Da Vinci Code. And we heard about a few of the atmosphere here, and as the journey went on, he realized how much he missed the missed company, even though he was his personal space was very much wasn't there. I remember while watching, thinking to myself, I've never really heard someone call a hotel a hostel as much as he does in his travels. So I wonder if that word is used more frequently than I imagine, because I'm used to people calling a motel or a hotel, you know, that kind of thing. Whenever he kept saying that word, I kept thinking, what, is everything hostile in there? You know, are people always angry? But ultimately, there were many places that were very beautiful. When he got into areas of Budapest and Bratislava, I actually was familiar with some of this area. And even when he went into Vienna, because I myself, when I was 17, went on a trip with my family um, to from Munich, Prague, Budapest, Vienna, and back to Munich again, and visited areas of Bavaria and things of that nature. So some of the locations in this film were actually familiar to me per se. So I thought his perspective was, you know, definitely unique. I mean, he's coming from a non-religious background, walking into some of these very religious places, and having an objective, uh, an objectivity about everything. So he goes a little bit more deeper into the reasons why each city is a little bit different from the other, and he finds different things about each area beautiful, and some areas are more crowded than most, but ultimately it ends with a note of change, a change within himself, and I think that's entertaining to hear. Because once you go through a journey of that extent, you know, you're not going to come out the same. Seeing things, even though he mentioned that he was much of his trip was spent viewing it through a tunnel vision. So he was wondering, even though he was seeing a lot, he wondered what he was missing throughout the entire journey, because a lot of it was through this lomographic camera, which there were several cameras that he had that broke during his journey, but he was able to capture quite a few things, quite a few castles, and quite a few sceneries of where some of these countries or cities or towns were near bodies of water. And he went kayaking out on a lake. Um, it was just a little bit of a, a living experience. So, in any case, hopefully you like how I described this film. I'm never quite sure how to describe experimental films like this, especially when it's images but with narration, where it's telling a story, telling a journey, and telling different perspectives of one single man. And I believe that the director had very good diction, like I said, and I thought that this was. Um, it was entertaining because it was a different perspective of, seeing the world, of a different part of the world, from Paris to, that side of the country. And each of them were different. I mean, it was a very narrow view, a very little imagery in some places, but I think we get to see snippets of life in these moments. And everything, at least in this film, ended up just being a memory for him. In any case, like and subscribe to my channel. If you have seen this film, definitely comment below. Um, I'm sure that there's still a way to get a copy of this film through Dustin Rosmark's website, which, if you looked him up, I'm sure that you could find him very easily. But yeah, there's my review on this film, and hopefully you found it entertaining. And thanks for listening. Um, have a good evening, morning, or afternoon, wherever you are.